everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and welcome to our program, Consciousness in Evolution. This is a project from Reaprendentia International, a consciousness-centric institution dedicated to re-education and personal evolution, including but not limited to self-research, paranormality, and bioenergies. Have you experienced ESP? ESP is an abbreviation meaning extrasensorial perceptions. They represent perceptions beyond the ordinary five senses. Today, we are going to talk about clairaudience, which is a rare psychic ability, and we are going to discuss the signs of those who are believed to be clairaudient. I am very pleased to receive here Mário Luna, which studied Portuguese and English and has been teaching English for over 27 years. You can bet that his English is better than mine. He is an entrepreneur in language education. He runs the Idioma Positivo school. He also has experience in translation, proofreading, simultaneous translation, and linguistic consulting. He has been studying and researching Conscientiology since 1998, and he volunteers in 3 conscientiocentric institutions, ASSIPI, CEAEC, and APEX. He has been researching clairaudience since the last 8 years. So please, Mario, with further delay, let's talk about it. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Anna, for this introduction. You were very friendly and sympathetic with your comments. Very nice indeed. Well, let's talk about clairaudience, which is a topic that I started actually studying, and we're going to talk about it, right, since 2016. Around that. Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, for having me here talking about this. This is a project that is coming out also as a course and a book that I am currently writing on the subject, right? So thank you very much, you and all the people from at Reaprendentia, right, for this opportunity to spread out my ideas and my research. Let's start with the next slide. Yes, our topic is perspective on clairaudience, right? So you have some objectives today, which is the first one, general and specific characteristics of the clairaudience phenomenon itself, understand clairaudience in multidimensional scenarios, and the pro-evolutionary benefits of clairaudience in self-research and recycling process, right? Okay. This is basically what we're going to talk about, but feel free to ask your questions anytime you want. Let's go for the next slide, please. Very important to say, principle of disbelief. Don't believe in anything, not even in what we hear here in this conversation, this presentation today, right? Experiment. It's important for you to have your critical thinking about what is said. Have your own experiences. Moving on to the next. Okay, so let's get down to own business now, to a topic today, which is the definition of clairaudience. What is clairaudience? Clairaudience is the part perception of the auditory perception beyond the biological limits of the auditory system, right? It's a parapsychic ability, essentially a mnemonic that is produced by one's own consciousness, right? So it's the ability to hear. Then we're going to talk about it. We're going deeper on it soon. It's the ability to hear sounds that are not commonly captured by the natural hearing process, which is made by the physical ears, right? You go beyond this. So you hear sounds and voices and messages from other dimensions, right? The etymology of the term comes from the Latin language, right? Clari comes from clarus, which means manifest, evident, clear. And the term audient also comes from the Latin language, audience. The present participle of audire, the Latin language, that means to hear or to listen. The term was originated in the 19th century. Let's go to the next one. Introduction. People, clairaudience is also called extraphysical hearing, extraphysical listening, para-hearing, and parapsychic hearing, hearing of the para-voice. What clairaudience is not: intraphysical hearing, intraphysical listening, deafness of the para-ears, extraphysical deafness, hearing of the physical voice, right? We're not talking about an ability that expresses itself in the intraphysical realm, but in the extraphysical one, right? Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. When we talk about parapsychic ability, it's important to consider how we relate to this ability, how we relate to the ability that we want to pursue outside of the body or connecting with the other dimensions than yours, which is the importance of knowing how to listen. So every time someone asks me how to develop clairaudience, I start from the beginning by saying it's important that you enhance your ability to listen the world around you here in the intraphysical environment. It's important to consider how we can further explore the auditory capacities of the physical ear. How do you listen? Or how important is for you to listen and to hear? Do you consider what you hear? Do you pay attention in what you hear? In English, there's a difference between to hear and to listen. To hear is when we just capture sounds and we identify these sounds, right? We hear messages. I can hear the airplane flying over, or I can hear the birds. But listen is when I pay attention. So in this conversation today, I will distinguish, right, the concept of hear and listen. Listen is when we really pay attention to. Possibly you are now listening to me, okay? So because you are paying attention to what I'm saying. So I would start by saying this, the importance that we have to take in hearing and listening to things in the intraphysical environment. Anna.
I have a question here because being a physician and here in the US, I am a nurse. Hearing it's like you said, it's something that is just en passant and just happens. Mm-hmm. But we have to train actually having the active listening ability, because whenever you listen to the patients, you are able to extract so much and to solve so many problems just from paying attention. And it's incredible how a lot of doctors I know, they are just in the computer, they barely look to the patient. And how do they expect to make a good diagnosis if they don't pay attention, right? And one of the questions that I have for you is that sometimes people say that they hear voices in their minds. For me, this would be like schizophrenia. But would it be possible to be clairaudience as well?
Listen, we are talking about here, when we talk about schizophrenia, we are talking about, I'm going to say this, it's a disorder, right? Schizophrenia is a disorder. It's a mental disorder. So in it, as a disorder, it has some symptoms. And then I studied schizophrenia to understand exactly what's the connection that people have with this, right? Because I was really sometimes mind-boggling. I couldn't understand very well what they meant by having these misconceptions of clairaudience and schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. Well, I found out that we have 11 types of schizophrenia, and just 2 of them, because there is another one that encompasses lots of other symptoms, because we have different kinds of schizophrenia. One of them, people report hearing voices in their heads. And this is one of the misconceptions about clairaudience, because when we are clairaudience, we don't hear sounds in our heads. We hear sounds here, like someone talking to you. You can even say where the context or the consigne projected, as it might happen, is the position of them, right? You can position the communicator. Where is the communicator? You can position that. It's not in your head. So I believe that the first misconception is understanding clairaudience as hearing voices in our heads. I believe that basically this is something to be connected or attributed to telepathy instead of clairaudience, because telepathy, it's like the way we talk, right? When we are outside of the bodies, connecting to help us or more evolved consciousness, the message is done telepathically. So we usually have this kind of message coming through our minds. So that's basically what telepathy is, not clairaudience. So for me, there is no point in mixing them up, but in the book, I'm writing more about it, and they had it very clear for people not to get confused among these situations, right?
Perfect. It was very clarifying. Thank you.
Good. So let's go for the next slide, please. Very nice. So here we have some traits of sharp hearing, right? So I want to be a clairaudience. If you have decided this, or if you want to develop this, it's important that we start training our hearing, our listening capacities and skills here in the intraphysical environment. So what can we do for that? So I listed here some of the traits that we can acquire by training, right? And some techniques that I'm going to talk about very shortly. One of them, great sensory attention focused on hearing. For example, for me, it's a lot better when someone talks to me instead of sending me messages, right? I grab the information a lot easier when someone is talking directly to me than writing or anything else. That's the reason why on WhatsApp, I like a lot more when I can record a message to someone, or when someone records a message to me. The senses are more sensitive to voices. So you have this as one of your practices. You like to listen to people. You like to listen to things. Be a natural good listener, as Anna said. Do you pay attention when people talk to you, right? To have an active listening. Having a good musical ear, that's another thing that's important. So there is techniques for you to enhance your musical ear. You have to listen to music. If you don't like that much, so you should enhance it more, because the music is really effective when we want to train your paraperceptions, your sensitiveness. You get more sensitive when you can distinguish the music frequencies, the sounds of music, and harmonies and harmony sound structures. So listen to music is a good exercise to enhance your listening capacity. Listen to music carefully and attentively, right? Having greater retention of mnemonic logic through hearing. This is another thing that you usually have when you train your hearing. Educating active listening, that is listening attentively to the interlocutor, right? Is really pay attention to people, what people are saying to you. Okay, let's go for the next slide. So listen, this is some things that I consider important if you want to enhance your parapsychic abilities, right? Because you cannot enhance your parapsychic abilities if you don't enhance your hearing abilities here in the intraphysical environment. So how can you pretend to have this in the extraphysical if you do this here, if you don't do this here, right? So if you want to plan to enhance your listening to other dimensions, so you have to enhance your listening in this dimension, right? Let's go to this question. This is a very good question, right? Are you a good listener? Just letting you think more about it. Are you a good listener? What usually happens, and what I usually see people talking is when you are talking to someone, right, especially when you are having a discussion, when you are talking about this, or when you are disputing an argument, or when you are disputing an idea, do you take advantage of the other speech time to think about the response you will give? That happens quite commonly, right? So, and you get distracted because you were thinking about your next words. You are thinking about what you are going to say next after the person just says their opinions. So, but at the same time, it sounds like what the person is saying is not important to you, because actually you just want to say what you want to say. You are not paying attention to what the person is saying to you. So it happens a lot. Actually, we wanders off, right, in unrelated thoughts. Like we're talking about, oh yeah, we're disputing arguments about something, and then might think about, oh, I forgot the gas on, or I have to buy something tomorrow, or I get connected to with the other thing that doesn't have to do with what we are talking about. So it happens a lot, right? But it shows that we are not quite interested in what the person is saying, right? Because we don't agree with them, because we don't want to have the time to think about what the person says seriously, so you can have your own opinion. So when we are not a good listeners, what usually happens is that we may have lots of problems, or some problems like miscommunication, right? Conflicts, or we can damage relationships, right? Because if you are known as someone who doesn't pay attention to what people say to you, people might feel that you are not a good friend, right? You miss information, you miss opportunity to learn from what the person is saying to you, right? It's a kind of a loss of opportunities of learning. And you also don't have the capacity of problem solving, because you don't evolve the conversation, because you just have your point of view. You cannot listen the other person's point of view. So that's a very good reflection you can have. Are you a good listener? Okay, let's go for the next slide. So in everything we do in life, this is a very good question. Why is it important for me? Why is it important? Or I'm doing this course. Why is this course important for me? Or why can I have the best from this course? What information this course can give for my evolution, right? My evolutionary path. So this is really a very important question. And we should ask this question when we are talking about developing parapsychic ability like clairaudience, right? So I listed 5 reasons why I started developing clairaudience, and here they are. Create direct communication channel between dimensions, create better rapport with extraphysical consciousness, increase multidimensional self-knowledge. It helps you know your target audience for assistance, develop great empathy with those we assist, and contact with our helpers. Okay, looking hindsight, I really remember when I started with this idea of developing my clairaudience abilities, I really thought about improving my communication skills, because I am a communicator. I like to be a communicator. I think that we have to communicate. We have to give classes, we have to give lives, we have to give lectures, we have to talk to people. So this is something very, very important for me. So I am a communicator. I like to communicate, and that sounds natural to me, that this communication goes beyond the intraphysical environment. I want to be a good communicator interdimensions, right? So that's the reason why clairaudience is so important to me. As it is other parapsychic abilities, right? Because the parapsychic abilities really open the gates of the dimensions, right? So we can know ourselves in a more, expanded way. So it's very important for me. So it's a value. It's a value. Being a good communicator or extending my communication abilities to other dimensions is a value for me. Next slide, please. Realize developing clairaudience, exercising the ears to hear lower and even subatomic sound frequencies through auditory acuity techniques. So you might ask yourself, what is subatomic sounds? Subatomic sounds, it comes from the study of sounds, right? It refers to very subtle sounds, perhaps those at the extreme lower end of the audible spectrum, or sounds that are manipulated at a very low volume. What is this? It's like that. For example, we are here. There are lots of things happening around us. Not only, for example, I'm here in a room with the air conditioner on. I can hear the air conditioning. I can hear myself. I can hear sometimes a car passing, going past on the street. So, but I cannot hear everything. I cannot hear, for example, the tick tack of a watch. I cannot hear the flying wings flipping around me. I cannot wait. There are lots of other sounds that are they are at a very lower level, so I cannot perceive these sounds. For example, can you hear the sounds of a drop when they fell into water and they splash out all the drops? Can you hear those sounds? No, you cannot, because it's a very low sound. This is considered to be subatomic sounds. Let's go. Now I'm talking about how I develop my clairaudience abilities. Anna.
I have a little question here, which is if we were able to hear this subatomic level of reactions and so on, we would get so overwhelmed like crazy, because as long as we exist, there are like thousands and millions of atomic reactions that are taking place in our body just so that we can be here in this moment, thinking, talking, interacting. So I guess that we have like a limited perception, because it would be kind of beyond our comprehension to live in this kind of,
Yes,
very, very precise and very subatomic possibility of hearing or
definitely.
listening, actually.
That would be crazy to perceive all these sounds around us, because we have millions and millions of sounds. So we were not cut out to have this kind of hearing. We were not cut out. We were not born for this. Actually, This is something. It's an ability that you can enhance, and you can enhance at a certain level. Of course, that we cannot be hyper accurate hearing. It's not good at all, right? But it's good to a certain level of perceptions, as we're going to see in the next slide. Okay, in this slide, I'm going to talk about this technique, instrumental transcommunication technique. It's a very well-known technique, right? The instrumental transcommunication technique is widely used in the world today, right? It was first created by a Swedish painter and filmmaker in the late of the 50s. He was recording the sounds of the birds in the garden at his home in Sweden, and he was recording birds. That was his intention. But when he started to hear the recordings, he found out that he captured sounds of people, and he started to going deeper into this kind of experiment, and he noticed that those sounds were from consciences in his garden. And he started to develop this method of research based on capturing sounds through recordings, right? Instrumental transcommunication, ITC, refers to practices mediated by electronic devices such as radios, televisions, and recorders for contact with extraphysical consciousness. In Brazil, we have a wide research on this topic using the method of transcommunication, right? One guy that was very important to this is Konstantin Rodiv, right? I think that the pronunciation is this. He's a Latvian psychologist who expanded the Yugeson's work, this guy that I mentioned before. And he wrote a book called Breakthrough, an Amazing Experiment in Electronic Communication with the Dead in 1971. And they started being very ubiquitous, right? All the world. Everybody knew it. And it's technique. You may have lots of techniques. I also will tell you today other techniques other than ITC. But that was the one I used totally by chance. I used to work at a school and I used to record messages to myself in my cell phone because sometimes I could not write them down, so I just record them. And when I listened to this, right, when I heard this message, I saw other voices. Then I started like, what is that? And of course, I started to create some scenarios and pay attention to the sounds around or the sounds on the street, right? Because I recorded at school. And I really noticed that I was capturing sounds and voices that were not part of that specific context, environment I was in when I made the recordings. So it was really intriguing and very motivating for me to start recording more and more. So I did this work for 4 years. I started in December 2013 until 2017. But then by 2016, I started hearing without the need of the recordings. And then in 2017, I stopped recording because I could hear the concepts. I could hear the other side, the other dimensions. So the recordings were not important anymore for me. But one exercise that I called the accurate hearing technique, the accurate hearing exercise of acuity, right? Hearing acuity techniques is because sometimes I recorded and I had to enhance the volume, sometimes 800 times more than the original volume to see if I could capture something. So the work of almost every day listening to these recordings and enhancing the sounds and trying to capture some sounds for 4 years definitely affected positively my para ears, right? With the ears of our para body. Okay, so if you don't understand very well what the para body is, this energetic body, the psychosoma, right? The body of the emotions is called by the spirit, the spiritual body, right? And then we have a replica of our physical body in our energetic body. And we have a replica of our ears too. So the para ears was kind of detached or prepared for being more sensitive to these sounds. And after 4 years trying to interpret hearing and enhance volumes, my ears had some change, in them, in this functionality, right? In this structure, the system, right? The hearing system changed, and it got to be a lot more sensitive because of this. Do we have questions, Anna?
Yes, I do have a question. How can you differentiate between genuine clairaudient experiences and ordinary thoughts or even imagination? How
Yes,
can you do that?
that's a very important thing, because when we are here in the intraphysical environment and even outside of the body, right? Lucidity is something that we are always pursuing to get it better, better, and better. We're struggling to have a better lucidity. And that's a very good question indeed. The thing is, you have different levels of clairaudient messages, right? When we hear someone from other dimension, you have the level A, which is the message is uttered in the same pattern and volume as our message. It's a really human voice, like Mario. this is a human voice. It's a very clear, it can happen. Others are more subtle, and others are even more subtle. So you have a difference between, timbre and tones. We're going to talk about this today when I show the characteristics of these voices and how more or less they come to you, or what kind of connections you have with those consexes, and how they use the energies of the laryngeal chakra to communicate with you. So there is some skill for this. It's not every consexes who is able to communicate as efficient as we are. So we have different levels of clarity. Over the years, when it's a class A communication, when I hear the voice of a consciousness beside me, and it's very clear, there's no doubt about it, right? But sometimes it's very low sometimes. So depending on the situation, I may consider or I don't consider. So it depends on the situation and the message, the quality of message. Some of messages I just disregard. Other messages has to do with some context I'm going through, or some moment of my life, or some recycling I'm doing. So what I usually consider is how important, effective, and useful the message is, right? Because you have different kinds of perceptions, right? Not only our perceptions happen towards those consexes who are talking directly to you. You may also hear messages of consexes talking between them or among them. So we have different kinds of situations. So this is the method I use is when it's very clear, it's undoubtedly a message coming from a consex, because the voice is clear, because the timbre is here, so it's clear, and so forth. So this is the way, but it's just a matter of experience, right? Because you are going to live and you are going to cut off some situations that don't say much to you. Then you are going to be more experienced in this filter and this filtering, right? Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? So prime stances for strengthening clairaudience, right? Prioritizing parapsychic development. If you prioritize your parapsychic development, then you have an extra will, an extra strength to develop your clairaudience. Daily practice of the vibrational state. That's very, very important. You work with the energies, right? Because when you work with the energies, you are also working and preparing and training your energetic bodies, right? Your energetic bodies, you will make it more adaptable to these communications, more sensitive to these communications, right? The application of auditory equity techniques, as I said, right? Focus and persistence in listening practices. Keeping a paraperceptual logbook. Write down everything. Write down the message you receive, what you hear, what is important. As I said, sometimes you disregard lots of messages, but sometimes this message has to do with you, and it must have a very logic and reasonable connection to your life, to what you are going through. So this is sometimes very useful message you can capture. Engage in parapsychic exercises, so you can practice your parapsychism or your parapsychic ability or skills in the dynamics that we do at the CEAEC, right? In Conscientiology, we have dynamics here in Portugal, right? Choosing a self-research subject. This is very important to have one direction. I'm here and I want to get there. So, and you are in the process, and the recycling process. So you are getting the track of your life, getting the track of your existential program. So you must have this, you should have this to get connected to the right side of all this scenario, right? Because you will have helpers with you, right? When you have a purpose in your life, when you are doing the things, for example, that has to do, things that have to do with your praxis, with your essential program, or when you have in mind assistential work, right? In summary, being ready for assistance. This is really something good to say. Be ready for assistance. This is some of the prime senses that you may consider when you are strengthening clairaudience. Next one. So, as I said, sound characteristics of clairaudience, right? The sound characteristics in clairaudience vary greatly in terms of volume, timbre, clarity, and intensity of the voice of the concepts or the projected consciousness or extraphysical sounds, and depends on certain conditions of the communication such as the parapsychic skill. As we in the intraphysical environment, as conscience, right, intraphysical consciousness, need to have some skills to hear consciousness on in other dimensions or hear them. They also need this skill to communicate with us, right? So a parapsychic skill is also needed both ways. It's a two-way communication. It's a two-way situation, right? We are dependent on this parapsychic skill, right? Moreover, the use of the energies of the laryngeal chakra. Certain consciousness manipulate this energy better than others. Evolutionary level of the communicator. That's very interesting because I perceived along these years of research that the audience or the use of the voice, the human voice to communicate is something more, I can say, earthly, something that you have here in our communication in the interphysical environment. So this kind of resource, this kind of tool, or I can say the habit that they have to communicate through our human voices is better manipulated by consciences who are more connected to the intraphysical world. When you go to dimensions where you have more subtle level of energy or consciences are more evolved, like helpers, the communication is more telepathically, not clairaudient. I'm not saying that you don't talk to your helper or may talk to your helper through clairaudience, right? They sometimes speak to you when they want a more extensive or when they want to be more clear and direct, straightforward. So they sometimes talk to you and you hear them. But it's not a very common thing to happen, right? When you're talking to helpers, a more evolved consciousness, the communication is more telepathically than clairaudience, right? Clairaudience is something more here, more, flesh and bone. Type of relationship the individual has with the communicator or extraphysical environment. That's that. You're always going to communicate with concepts that have something to do with you, right? Or they are helpers, or they are assisted, or they are blind guides, or they are intruders, but they all have some sort of connection with you, right? And the topic they are talking with you, they are sharing with you, has to do with you. The context of the communication, it's also very important. As I said, sometimes I am in a recycling process, so it's natural that extraphysically there are more intense movement of consciousness, right? Or if you work with assistants, for example, if you practice Penta, right? Penta is the personal energetic task that we do every day at the same time for 50 minutes for the rest of your life. This is a compromise, essential compromise. So this is a practice where in which we externalize our energies to other consciousness. This is very common to hear the assisted, to hear the helpers during Penta or before Penta or after Penta. So it's an environment very possible for you to get connected with the consciousness and they talk to you and you hear them, right? Next slide, please.
May I
Anna.
just ask a question before you go to the next one? Aparecida, she says that she had an experience sometime, and she heard a strong sound like someone hit the hand strongly in some structure, making a big sound. She's asking if this experience could be called clairaudience.
Well, it's hard, Aparecida. Thanks for the question, Aparecida. It's hard to say, or difficult for me to say whether it is or not, because I don't know exactly what happened. But if you heard a sound that was not captured in the environment you were, right? For example, I am in this room here, right? It's silence. And I hear a rap like this. I didn't touch anything, and I heard this. This is clear audience. It's clear audience. Someone is trying to communicate with me. It's a rap, right? We're going to talk about this difference. But let me give another example. Maybe this one is not very good because it can be rap or pneumatophony, which I will explain what it's all about. But if I'm here and I hear the sound like Mario with a female voice, there's no woman here. And I hear this, and I can say where the sound is coming from. It's here, the person's here. For me, it's clairaudience, right? There's no doubt about it. But as I said, sometimes it's not as loud as we are used to because they are not intraphysical consciousness. They are extraphysical. Depending on the way they manipulate the energies of the lingual chakra, the sound may go with a good volume, low volume. So it's really a matter of experience for you to have the discernment to distinguish this is that. It's a kind of we are always in a trial to get it more accurate. The more but the more we go through this experience, the more accurate we get. There's no other way. But then you have to pay attention to the context, right? Where you were, if you had people together with you in that environment, if the sound might have come from a place, or if the sound was really next to you. If you really say, no, I was alone in that room, the sound was inside the room and it was very clear, so it's clairaudience, this kind of perceptions. But this is a very good perception because it's a physical one. When it's physical, it's clear, right? The more subtle it gets, the more accurate we have to be. And the more careful also we have to be in analyzing and interpreting those sounds.
This is has a lot to do with self-research, right, Mario?
Yes.
And she completes with another question. She's asking, when someone listens to some voice in the extra physical space and doesn't see anyone around, could it be clairaudience as well?
When someone is outside of the body, yes, you also have clairaudience abilities outside of the body, because when you are outside of the body, you are in one specific dimension, but we have lots of consciousness connecting to you from other dimensions. So not always you are in the same environment as them, so they might talk to you, and you have also clairaudience. I call it extraphysical clairaudience. Is the one you have in other dimensions. I have had some experiences like this when I saw the consciousness. I knew he was talking to me, but I couldn't hear them. So because I was in one dimension and they were coming from other dimensions. So this is complex, but you can hear. Clairaudience is when you capture the sounds from all the dimensions, and sometimes you are outside of the body, one specific dimensions, talking to people from several other dimensions. So you have the same thing as we have here. You may be clairaudience to notice those sounds and hear the sounds or not.
Perfect. And just another question before you continue. It's from Angela Molina, and she asks if the sound of the ringing in the ear, that high-pitched noise, has something to do with the beginning of developing hearing extraphysical consciousness.
Well, when we are talking about clairaudience or any other parapsychic ability, Angela, it's difficult to diagnose because lots of things may be involved in this kind of things. For example, my son had an issue with his hearing, and he had this high pitched noise in his hearing. But in his case, was a physical problem, not an extra physical problem. On the other hand, sometimes we see people reporting the same high pitched noise as one of the how can you call it? Let me just see here. I need this information. Yeah, parapsychic signals, right? So it might be some parapsychic signals that you have that is also, it may be showing you a clairaudience thing, but it's difficult to say this is that because it's complex to say, right? Sometimes it's just a problem in your ear, and sometimes it's something that's coming from your para ears. What I suggest you is to start to study this thing, right? The ringing in the ear. So when does it happen? What's the context? In what context it usually happens to you, right? Or what do you feel? There is always, when we are talking about this kind of communication, there's always some kind of a pattern of energies involved. So I suggest that you also map out the pattern of energies that you feel when you have this. Maybe it could be good thing, sometimes a bad thing. The parapsychic ability or the parapsychic signal is not always a very good thing. Sometimes it's something that, it's showing us something that, wait, hold on, take care, danger, things like this. So you have to map out exactly the context you have these things and the feeling you have, the energetic perceptions you have, or the feeling you have. All of those things are important for you to map out, because the parapsychic signal is very personal, it's very subjective. Anna has hers, I have mine, you have yours. Each one of us has one specific way of communicating with all the dimensions, with all the consciousness in all the dimensions.
And consider your self-research. Always be very, very attentive, because before attributing to any kind of extrasensorial perception, see if it's not a physical symptom, first of all, right?
Yeah.
Because that can be a symptom of an infection. It can be a symptom of some compromising of your abilities of hearing.
Yes. But if there is something I have to tell you, Angela, is go for it. Go for it. Look into it. Don't just disregard or belittle your experiences. Go for it. Map out the moment you have, why you had, what's going on in your life, what's going on in your thoughts, your energies, who you are with. Map out, because you may have some answers based on this research. Then I would suggest strongly that you go for to knowing more about your subjectivity, right? Next slide. Oh, we are going really fast. It's almost 11 minutes to go. Okay, let's go. Increasing clairaudience in everyday situations. We can't pay special attention. As I said, people, they develop. I would say that I wouldn't be risking saying this, but listen. Everything that we need to develop, we need two things: method and technique. So you have to create a method and your techniques to enhance your things. And we have, through these techniques, to pay attention to certain contexts of our life and certain things we can do in our everyday life. Okay, if I want to develop a clairaudience, I cannot expect to develop only in courses, only in lectures, only in laboratories, or only with doing a dynamic with people from my group or Conscientiology. We need to adapt these tools and resources to our everyday life. And I suggest some of them because it worked a lot well with me, right? So I'm telling you because I've been gone through it, and I attested that's very, very effective, right? For example, listen to white noise. You know white noise? White noise is noise that it's permanent, it's standard, it's flat. It's like the noise of the air conditioner, the noise of the rain. the noise of any machine is a white noise. And even in the shower, I remember Professor Valdo Vieira saying that when he wanted to enhance his clairaudience, he just opened the tap to let the water flow, and then with the sound of the water, he could hear better. Yes, that's right, because the water produces white noise. So white noise is a very good kind of noise to get your para ears deconnected with your ears, right? It kind of relaxes your para ears, so you're more able to hear subatomic sounds. Or sometimes they are not subatomic, but you may be in a state of relaxation. So try to have your accurate hearing when you are relaxing. Just go inside, but also keep your perceptions open to the sounds around you. It's another thing that's very important, because sometimes when we are mobilizing energies, we are too concentrating our energies in your inside, in your inner, right, body of energies, right? But also when you are working out energies, it's important to pay attention to the sounds around you. In a hypnagogic state, this is the state we get in when we are about to get asleep. The hypnopompic state is the opposite. When we are waking up, sometimes we are still a bit, not sleeping, not awake, but you are in this hypnopompic state. It's easy to hear. Also, when returning from an out-of-body experience, during an event with great ectoplasm release, the ectoplasm plays a special role in the parapsychic events, right? Parapsychic abilities. So if you work on your ectoplasm, you will have a better clairaudience, right? In assistential environments, such as in Penta, as I said, sometimes I hear consciences before Penta, during Penta, and after Penta. So the Penta reunites, lots of consciences. So it's sometimes easy to hear them. And in pathological environments, of course, because in pathological environments, you are dealing with people who are still attached to this intraphysical world, and they manipulate the anemic energies very easily. So it's easy to communicate with this kind of consciences, right? Next slide. Good. Different ways you might experience clairaudience. As a complex and comprehensive auditory perception phenomenon, it involves different types, characteristics, and classifications, all essential for the parapsychic understanding of the multidimensional reality. I mapped out, it's almost a neological thing that I put here, right? Because we don't have anything written in Conscientiology about clairaudience, very little things, and a few things about it. And the books that we have in society and written so far are not so good as I expected. There's lots of mystical things involved, and this idea, this more scientific approach, it's not very usually seen. So it's been really hard to research what has been written about clairaudience, right? So some things I am starting from scratch, definitely from my own experiences. So that's the reason why the principle of disbelief is so important here. Don't believe in what I'm saying. Everything that I'm showing here is basically the results of 8 years of research, but you might have different opinions and might have different results from the ones I got. So let's go for the next one, please. So there is a direct intraphysical clairaudience is when a conscience or extraphysical consciousness is talking to you, then you hear. The indirect intraphysical clairaudience, which is you are hearing two extraphysical consciences talking. And this is very interesting because sometimes they are talking between them or among them, and you think that they are talking to you. No, they are not talking to you. They are talking among them. So you may hear some critical comments or criticisms or bad words sometimes, but doesn't have anything to do. You're just capturing their conversation. So be careful about it, right? Because you are capturing the sounds of people talking, and sometimes they're not talking to you. It doesn't have anything to do with you. So extra physical clairaudience, as I said to Aparecida, right? You can get an out-of-body experiences and have a clairaudience experience also outside of the body. Remote clairaudience, which is you capture as it's a remote viewing. You know what remote viewing is? Is when you project yourself to a place distance from where you are, so you can have the vision of this place. In clairaudience, it happens as well. You may hear concepts talking about, for example, that they are in a hospital, or that they are in a dark place, or that they are in a very dirt place, or they are in a place where there are lots of people doing a certain kind of activity. But you know that, okay, my place is not dark. I'm not in the hospital, but this concept is talking about that they are he or she is in the hospital, so it's not here. So it's this kind of perception is also possible, right? The remote clairaudience. And the reverse clairaudience. I call reverse clairaudience the idea that not every concept is able to hear us. It's very common for me to hear one concept saying, what did he say? What did he speak? What he's talking about? Because they are not able to hear us. They also have abilities in this connection, right? So the concepts is also clairaudience for them to hear us or have contact with this dimension, intraphysical dimension. Some of them apparently so far don't have. So pneumatophony is the ability of the concepts to produce sound in the physical dimension through the use of ectoplasm from another consciousness. Pneumatophony is the perception or the hearing of a sound that everyone has, not only the audience. For example, as I said, I am in this room, and if I'm with my wife here and we hear a third person say something and say, "Oh, did you hear this?" It was a man, wasn't it? Oh, what did you hear what he said? He said, "Hi." I heard this hi. Did you? And she said, yes, I heard the same sound. So this is pneumatophony. It's a very strong perception of a sound in the environment you are. Whether it's someone talking or just some sounds, it happens sometimes when everyone in the environment hears the same thing. And extraphysical pneumatophony, right, which is a phenomenon in which a projected intraphysical consciousness emits a voice to another conscient in a physical wakefulness state. Is this, I leave my body, right? I'm having an out-of-body experience, and I go to the CEAEC, the Center of High Studies of Conscientiology, and I meet someone there, and I see my friend is studying, and I say something to him like, "Hi, John," and he's able to hear me. So this is a extraphysical pneumatophony, right? It's when I project myself outside of the body and I talk to someone in the extraphysical environment in a remote place. Next one. Anna,
we have one more question here. As you were like explaining all the types of phenomena, would you have any advice to give us someone which is very skeptical about clairaudience or similar phenomena?
Well, if you are skeptical but you are curious, that's the best scenario, because we must be skeptical about things. Being skeptical is healthy for the research, for the serious research, or for a scientific research. Sometimes you are skeptical. I can say this, I'm skeptical about certain things, certain events, but I want to know more, I want to know more about it because I see serious people talking about it. So there might be an issue there. So let me see what's going on. So this being skeptical, if it leads you to learn more or research more, this is the perfect scenario for a good scientist, right? You are skeptical and you want to know more. Something intrigues you, so it enhances you. It just triggers your motivation to know more about it. I think you have to be skeptical. Yeah, as I said, principle disbelief is very important in my conception of studying the subjectivity of the consciousness. But I would suggest that you can learn more and have your own experiences. Have your own experiences. Go through the techniques and try to enhance your clairaudience and see what happens. Right? Clairaudience is something that it's a parapsychic ability for everyone. There's no one in this world that is not able to enhance it, to develop it. So go for that.
Yeah, it's very, very healthy for research, correct? And Aparecida has another question. She asks about if she can talk and ask questions while having a clear audience. Do you have any experience to tell us about it? And she also says, like, questions for who is telling you the information from the other side.
Yes, it's not very common because it involves a lot of ability from the contexts to keep the communication or to keep the energies of these communications on because it demands a lot from them. It demands a lot of skills from them to manipulate my energy and continuously. So it's a rare phenomenon, but I had one. And it was very interesting. It was a man, I knew them. It was my husband, my wife's ex-husband, my wife's former husband. He died last year, and this year he appeared for my Penta, right? In my energetic world, the one I said, Penta personal energetic test. He came to my Penta, and one day in the morning, I was just brushing my teeth at the bathroom, and he came and he said, "It's a very good work what you do. I'm really taking advantage of this. I'd like to thank you." Of course, he didn't say that because they don't utter the whole sentence, very long sentence. They kind of get this message cut off in pieces. But this is basically what he said, and I answered them, say, "Oh, it's nice. Oh, I'm so happy for this. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, be comfortable. It's a pleasure for me to be able to help you." And says, I thank you very much. It's actually for the first time we had a kind of back-to-back conversation. He said something, I replied. He said something about from my reply, and we had this like 1, 2, 3 spots of conversation. Of course, not long, but for the first time, I said something, he replied. I asked something else, and he replied. So, but it's a rare thing to happen. It's a very rare. So it demands a lot from the concepts to keep this energy flowing and for them to make use of this. This is what I really found so far. I may enhance this ability even further, but maybe I can have more of this kind of situations of talking to. I've heard of videos and films with clairaudience really have this kind of conversation, but it involves a lot of energy. Involves a lot of ectoplasm as well, right? I think that we have passed 4 minutes from 4. Anna, should we go a bit further? Or
go ahead, no problem. It's
yes,
very interesting, and that people are sending questions, so that's great.
All right. There is something I really would like to highlight, right? To stand out in all this talk here. It's to render, to interpret what is said. So the analysis go through these questions. What was said? How it was said? When it was said? Who said? What was felt concerning the emotional responses, right? What was the intention? What was the purpose? How useful it was? How reliable it was? So we have to ask all these questions when you are taking into account what is said to you. Because many things, I believe the majority of things that we'll hear are things like, oh, good, great, nice to know that. But if you are really dependent on what someone says to you, okay, you should not take it for granted, but at the same time, you shouldn't not take it too seriously. You must respect these messages, right? But making the most of it, because sometimes they are day-to-day situations in a conversation, right? The other day I was watching TV. I do my Penta at 11 p.m. I was watching TV and I just got asleep, right? I got asleep at my Penta time. I was right in time for Penta and I got asleep. And a concept came and said, he got asleep. When I heard this, he got asleep. I said, oh, there's a Penta time. Someone is complaining here that I got asleep. No. I didn't get asleep. I'm going to Penta. I'm sorry. I'm late. Let me go. So that was great because it was something so ordinary that we hear people talking here in the physical environment. But there was a concept saying he got asleep. Oh, he's not going to Penta. He got asleep. So this everyday thing that we hear that sometimes it's very, very nice. Well, I am really encouraged to think it's very, very important because this is a kind of communication that is so broad, right? It gives you so many perspectives for your own evolution, to know who you are, your localization, where you are from and what you're here for, so you may have the most of it. Let's go to the next one. So, positions that favor better interpretation, avoiding certainties and preconceptions, using the principle of disbelief, using discernment, logical thinking, parapsychic detailism, deepening the analysis, considerations, factual imagination, right? Auditory acuity, focus and attention. So, the more you are fine-tuning your perceptions, the better messages you get. Next. So I think it's the slides to close our conversation today. So the benefits of clairaudience, right? What perspectives does this phenomenon give us? Mapping the target audience. This is very important because you know who you are talking to. When an intruder comes and he's clear in his charge, right, in what he wants from you, you know exactly what kind of concepts you are talking with, or you are not talking because you don't talk, but you are in connection with, right? Deepening intraconsciential recycling, it shows you from a perspective, a multidimensional perspective. So it's a lot stronger, at least for me, when I hear someone complaining about something or charging me or asking me or even telling me off for something. For me, it's a lot stronger to get empathic to the conscience issue or the thing that the conscience is complaining about. I get a lot more involved and connected. Improvement of the personal code of cosmetics. Multidimensional self-awareness. You will know more about you. Right? Gain of parapsychic erudition. Strengthening the relationship with extraphysical teams because you're here to help us too. De-dramatization of extraphysical pressure, because the extraphysical pressure actually means the intrusion process, right? You say, oh, there's an extraphysical pressure, I'm feeling bad. Yeah, but what we are doing, you are in a de-intrusion process. You are in a cleaning process of your energies, and you have to deal with the consequences that are still, in your psychosphere. So you have to work with this scenario to help them, to assist them, and it causes pressure. So when you have the idea of what is really going on with you and why it's going on, sometimes not exactly why, but what is going on, who are there, and there must be a very a reason for that, a very serious reason for that. So you get more like, that's that. Let's work with this. Let's accept it. This is necessary, and building empathic assistance with those assisted, right? We may hear, sometimes we hear through the grapevine, like, this guy needs help, or this guy needs assistance. This is one thing. You may be empathic to it, but when we are connected with them, when you see them or when you hear them, when you feel them, you get a lot more involved with their issues. At least when you are assistance driven, when you are driven to assistance, when you are assistential. If you are assistance, you care. This is one point of being assistant, is when you care about the orders, when you care about the process that you have to work on, right? It's important for me to go deeper and deeper and deeper in my whole story, in my situation, evolutionary, and situation. But I don't know how deep it is or how far I can go. But it doesn't matter. Let's do it step by step, working out what have to be done. And this is something that is clear for me, that there's no other way to evolve, right? So whoever might come, or whichever demand these concepts bring, doesn't matter. Let's work on this. Let's be more empathic to this kind of rescue, right, and recomposition. And this is what the clairaudience or any other kind of a parapsychic ability gives you, is the opportunity to have a broader communication with those who are not in our dimension, intraphysical dimension. Let's go for this question.
Yes, that's the last question that we have in terms of cosmoethical implications or considerations. What should we be following during the study and practice of clairaudience?
That's a very good question. Cosmoethic implications, yes, definitely. Because when you put yourself in the center of your studies, in the center of your interest, you will be exposed to this multidimensional relationship that we have. And you are going through, possibly, in a recycling process. You are pursuing to overcome a trait, a weak trait, right? And then you realize that when connected to the helpers, when connected to this essential stance, right? You have to be on the track of the cosmoethics. So it becomes so apparent, because when you do something which is not cosmoethical, you have the repercussions, I would say, more strongly. This is my perception. Of course, we still have our thing, right? We have sometimes our anti-cosmoethical thoughts or anti-cosmoethical things, but when it's like open to other dimensions, and that is perceived, when you know that you've been watched, it causes you a kind of no, I cannot do this. No, I know the repercussions. I know that I've been watched, so I'm not alone here. No, I can feel it deep inside. There's no other way. I'm not gonna do this. Yeah, then it gives you a kind of a new principle, a new value. You know that you cannot do, and you start refining your behavior, refining your thoughts. It helps a lot in the cosmoethical, to reach a better cosmoethical pattern or level. So I think that it's a very important implication in it.
Perfect. As long as we develop our parapsychism, we become completely nude to the extra physical world. So
Exactly.
it's very easy to be shameful about some of our anti-cosmoethical traits or anti-cosmoethical attitudes that we might have. So we learn every day about it, right? So we came to an end of our presentation, but it's not the only time that you are going to be listening to Mario, which is an excellent communicator. He is also going to be one of the teachers in our next course. And actually, our next live is going to be about the course, Fundamentals of Evolution. And it's a course where we are going to be asking several interesting questions and also answering them because we are going to be developing and improving our evolution. It's a hybrid course, and it's going to be happening in the US, in the city of Roswell. Let me find here the banner here. And it has several classes. It's a total of 20 classes that we have part of them that are going to be in person and part of them are going to be online. So it's an excellent opportunity for you to develop your own parapsychism, your own cosmoethics as well. Right, Professor Mario?
That's right. It's a very important course. This is an entry course, right? That Anna and I and all the very good teachers, Eliane Vosloo, Jacqueline Cohen, Patricia Barbosa, Marcelo Pires, look at this team of teachers. And we'll be talking about these topics, actually 20 lessons, right, Anna?
Yes. We have 20 lessons that are here exposed in the banner. And our next live is going to be approaching some of those classes. And also, it's going to be exposing why we should study Conscientiology. Because each of us, we have a story how we got to know this science and how the knowledge of this science had impact our lives and made it better and changed our environment and also changed our way of life. So I'm not going to tell everything because then you are not going to be enticed to come next week, but that's what we have for now, okay?
Just a teaser, just a teaser.
Yes, that's correct. So I thank you all for being here with us today, and follow us in our channels on YouTube, Facebook, on Instagram. We are known by Reaprendentia International. And thank you for being here with us. And thank you, Professor Mario, for your availability and your great communication.
Thank you from Reaprendentia who invited me for this conversation today. It's a topic that I've been particularly on it for years and years and years, and I still have some years ahead because I'm writing a course about it and also the book. So it's a pleasure always to talk about Clairaudience development. And I wish you very good self-research, very good, process recycling process for you to know more and more about yourself. This is the most precious things that we have in this study. Thank you.
And we'll see you again on June 16th.
Sure.
Okay.
All right then. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.